Hello and welcome to the next episode of Plan Talk. Today's a really interesting one, not least because we go into probably some of the more complex work that City Hall are leading on in this space. So I'm really pleased to welcome Sandy and Francesco to give us a presentation on sharing cities. And I honestly think that every single one of your slides is going to trigger a million questions. So I'm really sorry. A couple of bits of housekeeping before we start. The first is that the format's kind of TED Talk-ish, so it's about a 15-minute presentation that the pair of you are sharing, and then we've got about 15 minutes for question and answers afterwards. In terms of questions, I'm just trying to work out which side the panel is. The panel should be that side. As we go through, if you've got questions, please can you put them in the panel, and then we'll structure them and try and pull them together as we go through. So go for it. Please do introduce yourselves and show us the work you've been doing.
Great, thank you very much, Peter. So my name is Sandy Tung. I'm the program manager for Sharing Cities based at the Greater London Authority. I'll leave Francesco. Do you want to introduce yourself first as well?
Hi everyone, I'm Francesco Marchet and I'm a project manager at Connected Places Catapult, the new name for Future Cities and Transport System Catapult. And in Sharing Cities, I've been leading the work stream related to citizen engagement.
Thank you, brilliant. So let me start by introducing the Sharing Cities program, and then I'll explain how some of these measures work together, and then I'll hand over to Francesco to talk more about the details of the digital social market and citizen engagement. So the Greater London Authority is the lead coordinator of a European research program called Sharing Cities. It is a part of the EU's research and innovation program called Horizon 2020. And it's part of the Smart Cities and Communities Lighthouse program, which is the EU's largest smart cities initiative that's comprised of currently 19 projects so far that's developing sustainable solutions in technology-enabled mobility, in citizen engagement, energy and data management, and so on. Sharing Cities is a 24 million euro 5-year program that began in 2015 and is formed of a group of 34 European partners from across the private, public, and academic sectors. And we're testing smart city solutions in what we call lighthouse cities. That is Lisbon, in Milan, and London, where we are testing the solutions in partnership with the Royal Borough of Greenwich. We also have 3 other cities in the network. That's Burgas in Bulgaria, Bordeaux in France, and Warsaw in Poland, where we're replicating the measures that are tested in these lighthouse cities to demonstrate the scalability of these solutions. Now, the overarching aims of the program is that through collective demand aggregation, we can actually shape a collaborative smart cities market and try to increase the speed and scale at which these solutions and these citizen-centric solutions are implemented across cities. And so we're trying to support national and local authorities in meeting their sustainability commitments. We also want to make sure that the use of these we want to make sure that we use citizens' drive to support positive actions that mitigate the impact of climate change and empower them to use their sustainable behaviors to make impact. And through actions, things as including active travel, use of e-mobility, sustainable energy consumption, and so on. So the program Sharing Cities is built on 3 principles, as you can see on the slide here: people, place, and platform. In short, we're trying to engage with citizens effectively in order to implement sustainable low carbon technologies in local neighborhoods, and using shared data platforms that can manage data-driven solutions. And we're testing a range of solutions, including low carbon mobility solutions such as e-bike sharing schemes, electric vehicle car clubs, and logistics solutions. Around smart street infrastructure, we're testing deploying smart lampposts that are fitted with sensors and electric vehicle charging points and smart parking solutions. And around the built environment, we're testing and implementing building retrofit works that improve energy efficiency in residential and public buildings, as well as testing sustainable and integrated energy management systems that can better manage and optimize energy use in districts. And all of that work, you tie it together, the glue, if you will, is our is the work around our data sharing platforms, which integrates the data from these measures to inform policy management and citizen engagement. And then from kind of whether you're talking about electric or shared mobility schemes, or if you're talking about building retrofits, all of these measures that we've developed, we've included and developed co-designed solutions and co-designed approaches to ensure that citizens have been engaged from all the steps of the process. So what we are here to talk about today, and all of these measures can actually be integrated within with the digital social market as well, or DSM for short. And it's a tool that's being used to influence behavior change. It's a very versatile tool. Francesco will talk a little bit more about it, but basically it can be used to create an online community where members can encourage each other to think and act differently and make positive, sustainable impact. The DSM as a solution can be connected with all the smart technologies that I mentioned just now in lots of different ways, depending on what your intended outcome is. So, for example, you can connect sensors and smart meters in homes to let building residents know when to use their appliances less or more, to reduce their energy use, to help manage the strain on the electricity grid. So in that way, the DSM becomes a tool for demand-side response. Or you could connect up the tool to mobility platforms and to engage more actively with transport and exercise. And so there are lots of different ways that it works, but I'll let Francesco explain.
Thank you, Sandy. Yes, so building from this structure of the project, we looked at the services that were available and how they were connected, how they could provide data and information useful to incentivize, to build incentivization and to promote behavioral change and change in perspective into citizens. So we developed what we have called a digital social market, and we are now showing you the structure of the concept. So if you look at the center of the screen, you will see these three tiers that we defined into a digital social market framework. This framework has allowed us to look into how value is created and how value can move from the individual to the community and from the community to the individual. And there are three layers that we have identified and that we have been working on in the digital social market. At the top, as you can see, there's the consortium of promoters of the DSM. So those are local authorities or private entities that are interested into incentivizing citizen engagement and kind of push on changing for the benefit of the grand challenges around mobility, energy data that we experience in our cities. At the bottom of it, there are the citizens, as you can see, and those are not just targets, but they are main characters in the play of the digital social market. Citizens are asked to change their behavior, to uptake new services that has been created. And in the middle tier, we have the so-called rewarding partners, which are businesses that, brought in by the consortium of promoters, gives rewards to citizens in exchange of points that you can gain through modifying your behavior. The example that we are showing here is one of the three we have developed. This is Sharing Me, the digital social market of Milan. Milan started with some challenges locally. They had one of the highest percentage of cars per 1,000 inhabitants. They had the 60% of the all journeys around Milan were done by motorized mobility in 2016 when we started to look into this solution. 55% of the buildings there were on class G, so low levels of efficiency, and there were already the perception that climate change was a real challenge for the resilience of the city. So there were challenges, but there was also an appetite for change. The municipality had already launched 6 car sharing schemes, 3 bike sharing schemes. There was a very big fund launched for retrofitting, and the condition itself of the city were quite good because citizen engagement was already something that was carefully looked after by the municipality, and there were also a network of local communities in the different districts of the city already active. So that was a very fertile context where the Sharing Cities project has developed and deployed services, and on top of these services has built this digital social market. If we have to be very, very basic, someone has said the digital social market is just another hub. In reality, if you need to engage, we discovered that if you need to engage with citizens, you don't just buy an app and you deploy an app, but you need to look at all those offline activities that will enable the success of your online tool and your online engagement. So what we have done, moving from the framework, it has been looking into 5 main sets of actions. One was to localize our framework, our idea, and to tailor it into the specifics of the city. Thinking about onboarding, how can we make sure that we are able to recruit citizens and have them happily contributing to this online community? How do we retain this interest? How do we maintain this interest? But also on the other side, looking practically at what are the business models and what kind of governance such an initiative might have, and how these projects are not just a one-off coming out of an European project, but become something that is embedded in the city. So really, we have been working with the local partners to create these rewarding mechanisms and making sure that both the citizens and the community gains a reward for their positive actions that contribute to the city. As you can see on the left side of your screen, the app that kind of summarizes all these actions is divided into a community where people can scroll along and see what other people do. So there's an element of positive reinforce of the actions by seeing what other people are doing. Then there is an element where you can post a story about your action, and so you might decide to pick up one or another action that is classified, and each of those actions gives you points. Your story is then published, and this story is rewarded for the interaction that it generates in the community. And with these points that you accrue, you can redeem rewards that are coming from local businesses. This is very important because it adds an element of circular economy and support to the local economy for districts that might struggle because of the new ways in which we all are shopping now, but reduce massively the real social network, the physical social network of our cities. And now, in this moment, more than ever, we know how much we have, how much the physical network is important to cope in times of crisis. We had a very successful launch. Within a few weeks, we reached about 1,700 users. We had in the first year more than 5,000 stories shared across the the community. We had 25,000 interaction on these stories, and this has been kind of the initial start to the launch of the application. The other component that is kind of the temporary one is the challenge one. So on top of my ordinary interaction with the community and building a sense of share with my community, a specific organization can ask permission to launch temporary challenges where citizens are requested to perform some actions or to share some thought about and get rewarded by points. I will leave this to Sandy, that will show you, for instance, how the digital social market of Milan and how this kind of citizen engagement has been used during the COVID lockdown of this month. To move on to the next 3 slides, we will just skim through them. But as you can see, we have applied various elements and various skills to be able to make sure this community was created in the proper way. We had insight and service design experts drawing potential user journey, where we were at service journey, and this is the example of how we have translated just a framework and just an app into all the physical interaction, into all the analog interactions. This, as you can see, has been done for citizens, and in the next slide you will see how the challengers can participate into the activities of Sharing Me, and how the rewarding partners as well can participate, and how value is created for all these categories that are involved in the digital social market. I am very, very happy to provide you with the papers we have created. Sandy and I have also created playbook around all this experience that can be shared with all the details. I will just mention on a side, Sandy was referring earlier to the fact that we haven't just created a new tool for citizen engagement, but we have also been careful to co-design the services with citizens. And out of all that experience, we have distilled a serious game which allows you to think about the services that you are implementing, that you can test and sense check your service with all the insights that we have gained developing tens of services across the 3 cities throughout the project. So I'm really, really happy to share. Just get in contact with me, and I will be happy to share with you this process to support the co-creation of urban services.
Oh, hold on. There we go. It's working again. That's really, really interesting, and I think there's some really kind of detailed questions that people could kind of explore in that space. I think the first one that kind of comes to mind is about the principle of sharing cities, because it was an EU-funded strategy initially, wasn't it? The question is how that fits kind of in this space, in the post-Brexit piece. Is it going to be continuously funded, or is it a parked project?
So I can answer that, I guess. So this is an EU Horizon 2020 project, and as it stands, it's been funded for a period of 5 years. So actually, our program is slated to end at the end of this year in December. It's a fixed program, obviously, so there won't be additional funds related to Sharing Cities directly. However, we have been working really hard, especially in the last few years of our project, once the implementation of these measures have been complete, to really capture the processes and to ensure that the lessons that we've learned are really being documented so that they can be replicated in other cities. And even, you know, in London, while our test bed was in the Royal Borough of Greenwich, we're eager to translate these lessons and transfer them over to the other boroughs as well. So we've documented that those lessons learned in a series of playbooks, as Francesco has mentioned, for not just the digital social market, but for the other solutions as well. And we're also engaging with other stakeholders within the city in London and other cities around the UK and Europe, in just finding opportunities for us to share these lessons out, make sure that it's not just a pilot program.
And then that kind of leads on to the other challenge that follows after that is kind of how the COVID-19 piece has driven changes to this project at this point, because there's lots of potential now out that didn't exist before the COVID-19, and whether that's kind of changed some of the outcomes.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you can still see my screen, but in my last slide, I had some screenshots of what Milan is doing with Sharing Me. So to your point exactly, Peter, Milan especially has been very good at linking COVID-19 response and recovery plans to also support the wider goals of tackling climate change and sustainable development. And for Sharing Me in particular, you know, as the pandemic took hold in northern Italy in early March, I think the city quickly pivoted and used the platform to help residents maintain their connections to their local community, while at the same time kind of not losing sight of the tool's fundamental aims of encouraging people to adopt sustainable behaviors, but this time staying at home. So during the lockdown, a campaign was launched to encourage users to complete specific challenges, for example, one of them was to complete a 7-day kind of #stay-at-home eco diary, and sharing suggestions and ideas with the community about how, you know, what to do during the quarantine, how do you keep kind of these green behaviors, at the same time, you know, offering a sense of belonging on this community and helping users feel less lonely during the social isolation. And what the city found was that during the lockdown, users have more time and found more time to be online and dedicate themselves to these sustainable activities. They were posting things like, you know, fixing broken things, buying new ones, growing vegetables at home, cooking vegetarian and vegan meals, and so on. And using these activities that seem quite ordinary, but to inspire each other and be inspired by each other's posts. So I think over that period, I think over 450 stories have been shared, and secret codes were activated from these activities, and it could be redeemed during the lockdown period.
So that's really interesting for me as a town planner, because it seems to kind of create a new space where you can interact with communities about planning proposals. But I'm also kind of very aware of the stuff that operates behind the scenes, certainly in local authorities, in this sort of space around monetization. Is that a conversation that's been had? And if it's been had, how's kind of that concluded?
So that's an ongoing conversation, and you know, it comes out of your previous question, possibly also, how do we maintain in the long run these kind of services when other sources of, I mean, one-off funds to kickstart end? We have been looking into that, building on the experience of the 3 demonstrators. So we have presented today in Milan, but we have also demonstrator all around energy in Greenwich, and we have another demonstrator that has relied also on peer-to-peer education with pupils in schools that was developed in Lisbon. But across all of these, we have been looking at how the business models work, and there are different options, and every city, every authority can look at what's the best. We never monetize data on this project, so we haven't provided data about behaviors to anyone, but we have been exploring rather other form of funding, which are premiums or freemiums, and talking about local businesses that might be interested to get into this new way of promoting themselves, placing themselves towards sustainability, towards climate change. You know, the discourse around around sustainability is becoming more and more important, and citizens are becoming more and more aware and are requiring more and more from the businesses where they buy things, for instance. So that's also one of the ways that we have explored. There's a very large range. There's a very wide range of possibility. We have explored most of them theoretically to check also what's the ethical implications and what's the level of inclusivity also of each business model, because obviously each one of them, I would say one size can't fit all. There is a blend, and we are happy to share all the documents around it, so everyone can assess what's their level, or what's their flavor, or what's their need to make a sustainable service in the long term.
That kind of comes to one of the other questions that's come in, which I'm going to rephrase slightly around this digital inclusivity in the cities where you've been playing with this, because I'm kind of trying to think through people who don't have access to things like Facebook or mobile phones. Has there been ways to get past that, or have you just taken the view that you're taking the bulk of people?
So that's a very good question, and to answer, from the outset, the project was looking into developing something digital to connect all these services. When you think about Sharing Cities, you think about a project that was conceived in 2015. So 5 years, especially in the digital space, is quite a long time. But the approach we have taken was to say, before selecting any technical solution or developing anything, let's have a look to the 3 cities. Let's have a look to their to make a digital baselining of these cities. And what we have done, for instance, we discovered that in one city, iPhones were not kind of in the market massively. Rather, to be more inclusive, we have decided to develop a web app that could be downloaded on every kind of phone, so it works everywhere. And so in some ways we were compelled to do something digital, but we tried to be as much inclusive as possible through all the information that we could gather about the local condition.
So kind of with that in mind, bring it kind of straight back to London. Given all of the changes to the cycling infrastructure, which is the bit that I'm really interested in, sorry, could there be an opportunity to integrate some of this DSM with Citymap or TfL to boost the uptake of active travel? And kind of how does that all fit in with the vision at the moment?
I think there is the appetite for it, for something like this in London, and all avenues are explored to kind of replicate this kind of solution, because we have found it very, very effective. And with this approach that we took as a project, as I said, we can fit very different conditions. It's very, very interesting, especially in this time. And I would say London has a very good infrastructure that might offer opportunities for the future.
That's really interesting. Sandy, is that the same view as you take, or?
Yeah, I mean, we're exploring lots of different ways that the DSM can be applied, and what we found is that it's a very versatile tool. So you really apply it to a very large range of situations. The way that the DSM is used in Greenwich, which is for demand-side response, is so different from what's being used in Lisbon and Milan. So we're really keen for it, and I think, yeah, you know, that transportation element just seems so natural.
Yeah, completely. And there was one other throwaway comment that, just on a personal note, I wanted to ask about, that in your presentation about lifetime monitoring of energy usage. I was quite fascinated by the suggestion that there might be a moment you might want to encourage people to use more energy. Was there anything else? When would that circumstance really be? I was really fascinated, sorry.
Do you, I can answer, Francesco. Okay, no, so this actually, this tool is actually being combined with one of our other solutions within Sharing Cities called the Sustainable Energy Management System, and so it integrates data from lots of different energy assets. So that's you're in the homes. We're talking about a smart meter that's connected to your appliances and so on. And so, you know, there are certain times of the day where the energy demand is higher. Back in the olden days, this would be, for example, I think like when the football matches were on. So during the halftime break, everyone would switch their kettle on. Now, I don't know exactly. I think that the energy use patterns have been changed, and it'll be fascinating as our data comes through to show how the energy use has changed. But anyway, that's a different point. But so you can imagine when you have these peaks and troughs, you know, when you can get enough people to change their energy use pattern, that it can actually really smooth out the peaks of the demand in the grid and actually make it less vulnerable to disruption.
No, that's
so
really,
kind of thinking about the resilience.
Yeah, because it's a very good example of the synergy between different assets developed by the project, and these peaks are those that cost the most in maintenance. You know, the peaks in the grid are the problem. So trying to combine the kind of digital twin and the algorithm of the SEMs together with something that can help citizens to realize that they can make the difference with small action every day, that was the perfect natural habitat where we developed this synergy within the project. So people are incentivized, have a small monitor, and they are incentivized through it to smooth their peaks.
You can really see how that's got a real direct impact on people. So that's really interesting. Thank you both so much for this. It really is appreciated. We've just run out of time, but it's a subject that I think I could discuss all afternoon. So thank you so much for your time. And the only other thing we have to say is thank you to Natalie and Lucy for making the magic happen. So thank you.
Thank you.